state of affairs, given that we're living in such a global environment, and given that Britain as a trading nation is international at its very core, that I just thought, well, how can you have your head so in the sand that you're never going to look international?
Where do you think that comes from?
I've absolutely no idea. I really don't. I don't know whether it's fear, and it's a fear of not being paid, or a fear of not knowing where to start. I mean, the survey did say that 30% of businesses didn't know where to start. And all I can say to that is, it's not a question of starting, it's a question of continuing what you're already doing here, but putting it in a global context rather than in a domestic UK or even in a European context. So if you have a new business strategy for your company, which a lot of people don't, but if you do, then the international side of it is just should be a natural extension. It should not be a Mount Everest that you need to climb.
The thing that I was surprised about, and to be honest doesn't reflect my experience, is that the level of UK based design buyers actually considering or actually accessing design services from overseas is very, very low, almost negligible in statistical terms.
I was surprised by the reticence of some of the designers to want to go and work abroad, because obviously the opportunities, given how great the British design industry is, there's good markets out there and there's money to be made. So I was surprised 40% of the people said they're reluctant to go and work abroad. I think they're missing a big opportunity. I was surprised by that. I do understand, there have been some bad stories about doing work in India, China or Russia and getting payments. But if you're persistent, there's in the UK, supply outstrips demand. In other markets, it's the reverse. Well, water will follow its course. You've got to go where things will happen.
I think probably the most surprising finding was that we saw 2% of design buyers are actually only purchasing design services overseas at the moment. And I think that's surprising, given that we're in an environment where there's so much publicity in the design press at the moment, there's so much concern about competition from overseas designers. But I think what it's highlighted is actually that the state of the industry now is something that's slowly and steadily really changing, and design buyers are looking to find these options abroad. And in the meantime, design agencies are competing with international agencies in international markets, not just in the UK. And that just generally, I think, we need to think less of ourselves as a UK industry and more as part of a global industry.
I think I was quite surprised how few UK businesses are actually suffering the competition on the domestic side. So in terms of UK client businesses, most of those are not really looking outside the UK for their design business. But of course, what was also really interesting was to see how many of those UK design consultancies are alert now to the potential of competition from anywhere in the world. And it's quite clear to see that there are remarkable design consultancies, design capabilities all around the world, and that those are now a potential threat, given the heating up of global competition just in the business markets generally. All of these are phenomenal opportunities for design, but they're not things that small design companies will necessarily want to just throw themselves into. And I thought that was one of the interesting conversations that came out tonight. Designers increasingly will and are indeed working in partnership, often with local design businesses and or working with in-house client groups internationally. It's the only way. If I want to survive, I'm going to be competing not only against my peers in my local town, I'm now competing on the global stage. And it's always important to understand the competitive environment in which you're operating. Otherwise, you compete or you die.